Greetings and welcome. We are in Junior English, and our objective now for the hour is to introduce you to one of the great American thinkers and writers. But are you ready for this? He didn't start out that way at all. As a matter of fact, this guy was going to make himself famous any number of other ways. Namely, are you ready for this? As a scientist. No kidding. This guy was one amazing inventor. And if you know anything about him, in terms of the famous, iconic representations of Benjamin Franklin, it is him flying some goofy kite in the middle of a storm, which is kind of funny. But he was investigating or doing science investigations on, namely, lighting. Okay? So I'm with you in your hymnal. Let's go ahead and start on 136, 137, 138, 139. And let's talk about this guy named Benjamin Franklin. All right? Now, the first thing I'd like to point out for your notes on page 136 is the dates. Whoa, do you see this? See, it's funny to me how students go to history class and things don't register. Take a look at this. 1706 to 1790. Jot down in your notes really quickly one thing that matters to you. Just do the quick mathematics. This cat almost lived 90 years, which means he almost lived all of the 1900s. I'm sorry, all of the 1700s. Whoa, that's amazing. Think about the time history when this cat lived. He and his pals are going to be engaged in a very important activity, namely the Revolutionary War. Revolution, all but related to fighting. The English are in control. The American colonists have decided enough, and they're going to fight. Ben Franklin is one of the important players in that moment. Of course, 1776, we, of course, will in many ways measure the beginning of our nation by this important document that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments instituted among men. Franklin helped write those words in 1776, and then lived how much longer? See it? That's why you wrote down the dates. This is a cat who saw the entire experience of the building of America. So for no other reason, we sit up and we take special kind of attention here to this guy. He is a really important American, an important thinker, an important writer. Take a look on page 136, 137. Notice he's going to be involved in all kinds of writing projects, right? Poor Richard's Almanac, you want to write that title down. It's going to be for him a really influential bit of sayings. He is a man of science. I'm on page 137. He is a statesman and a diplomat, an important politician. And of course, he will write the first section of his autobiography in 1771. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What is that A word? Let's write it down. Autobiography. What is an autobiography? Well, a biography is if somebody writes something about you. An autobiography is when somebody writes something about themselves. You got me? So the autobiography of Ben Franklin is when Franklin is writing about himself. Okay? Just to prove my point, by the way, on 138, take a look at that. Man, if I had more time, we'd go into this stuff in detail. I'll just let you look at it on your own. But look at all the stuff he's a first at. By the way, hello, for those of you that like that film National Treasure, see, I just gave you a three-A observation. For those of you that like that film National Treasure, all this stuff about Ben Franklin, lots of it is going to be mentioned in that famous movie, National Treasure. You know, he's involved in making fans, fire departments in 1736. The lightning rod in 1752. I just mentioned that one a few seconds ago. He made an odometer in 1775. Are you seeing this with me on 138? Bifocals in 1784. Look at the last one, daylight savings time. He invented daylight savings time. Isn't that wild? So, for example, this is a guy who does all this really amazing stuff in his life before he dies. But we're going to turn now to his autobiography. Now there's two things we want to say about this autobiography before we read it. One, do you see on page 139 at the very top it says, from the autobiography? Does everybody see that? Make sure you see that. From the autobiography, which means that what we're listening to and reading now is a very small part of a much larger text that Franklin wrote about his life. Okay? Number two, when we read this text, we are going to be looking specifically at his schedule for himself, his plan for his life, all right? And we're going to be very interested in the ways in which Franklin was about self-improvement. You want to write this down? Franklin was about self-improvement. What does that even mean? What is self-improvement? Well, you look at yourself and you say, I got a problem. Whatever it is. I got to fix it. How am I going to fix it? Franklin says the best person to fix your problems is you. And that's kind of how he's going to outline how he took care of himself. Now, I'm with you on page 141. I'm looking at the background information at the top. Read it with me really quickly. Ben Franklin, are you reading with me? I'm on 141, background information. Read it with me now. Ben Franklin arrived in the city of Philadelphia. Uh-oh, we want to write that down. He comes from Philly. He is, of course, one of the native sons of Philly, and we celebrate Ben Franklin in Philadelphia all the time. In 1723, he is 17 years old. That's kind of fun because most juniors who read this text are themselves 17 years old. Okay? So imagine this. You arrive right now at your age in a city you've never been to at the age of 17. He knew no one. He had no money, little money, fewer possessions. His accomplishments, however, will shape the city in ways that are still visible today. He helped establish, whoa, check this out. Are you reading it with me? I'm on page 141. For example, he helped establish Philly's public library, the fire department, as well as its first college. Oh, we could at least write that down. There's a lot of important schools in Philly, and Ben Franklin helps to found the very first one. Hey, can I just pause for a moment and have you write this down? The early thinkers in America were very interested in education. Why? Because Franklin will argue that a people can only go as far as their education allows them. Whoa, hear what he just said. You only go as far as your education. I once said this and a student said, dude, that's what my grandma keeps telling me. And I said, you know why she says that? Because she's smart. That's why. Because she understands the value of an education. You ain't got no education, you ain't got no J-O-B. You ain't got no J-O-B, you ain't got no currency. See how that works? Your education is what frees you. And Franklin, along with those early American thinkers, he really understood this. It mattered to him. So colleges are important. His pal Jefferson also, of course, major educator as well. Philadelphia became the first city in the colonies to have street lights because of his help. Brilliant man that he was, some of his success is attributed to just sheer, there's a term you definitely want to write down. Self-discipline. Self-discipline. Now for the ball players in the house, you already understand this, huh? For the athletes in the house, you already understand this, huh? Right? So for example, I go to ball practice, and they got those guys out there running lines. You know what this is all about? Run down to the line, run back. Run down to the line, run back. Run down to the line, run back. So you walk up to one of those cats, standing there, ready to puke his guts out, and you walk up to him and say, dude, what are you doing? You could be like home eating nachos and playing video games. Why are you running your can off? And he would look at you like you're the one that doesn't know what you're talking about, and he would say, what are you talking about? If I don't train, I will not win. Self-discipline. Question, and then we'll get right to the reading. How do you make yourself do what you don't want to do? I'd write that question down. That's a 3B question, and I would write it down. And at the end of our time together with this text, we're maybe going to ask you to write down a line or two about that question. I'll ask it again. How do you make yourself do what you don't want to do? Right? We're way cool at doing what we want to do. That ain't no thing. But what about the stuff that we don't want to do? But are you ready for this? We need to do. Right? How do you make yourself do something you don't want to do? Are you ready for this? Ben Franklin asked that question and came up with a very interesting answer. Let's listen to his answer. It starts with us now on page 141. Now again, I'm really going to challenge you. This is a fairly lengthy reading. I'm really going to challenge you to stay with the reading all the way through. Don't brain drain on me. Follow with the tip of your pen or pencil. You don't have to write anything down during the reading. Just follow the reading. Try to pay attention. This is from the autobiography of Ben Franklin. Let's go to work.
From the autobiography by Benjamin Franklin. It was about this time I conceived the bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection. I wished to live without committing any fault at any time. I would conquer all that either natural inclination, custom, or company might lead me into. As I knew, or thought I knew, what was right and wrong, I did not see why I might not always do the one and avoid the other. But I soon found I had undertaken a task of more difficulty than I had imagined. While my care was employed in guarding against one fault, I was often surprised by another. Habit took the advantage of inattention. Inclination was sometimes too strong for reason. I concluded at length that the mere speculative conviction that it was our interest to be completely virtuous was not sufficient to prevent our slipping, and that the contrary habits must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we could have any dependence on a steady, uniform rectitude of conduct. For this purpose, I therefore contrived the following method. In the various enumerations of the moral virtues I had met with in my reading, I found the catalog more or less numerous, as different writers included more or fewer ideas under the same name. Temperance, for example, was by some confined to eating and drinking, while by others it was extended to mean the moderating every other pleasure, appetite, inclination, or passion, bodily or mental, even to our avarice and ambition. I propose to myself, for the sake of clearness, to use rather more names with fewer ideas annexed to each than a few names with more ideas. And I included under 13 names of virtues all that at that time occurred to me as necessary or desirable, and annexed to each a short precept, which fully expressed the extent I gave to its meaning. These names of virtues with their precepts were:
an interesting list.
1.
Follow it.
Temperance. Eat not to dullness. Drink not to elevation. 2. Silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. 3. Order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. 4. Resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. 5. Frugality. Make no expense, but to do good to others or yourself, i.e., waste nothing. 6. Industry. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. 7. Sincerity. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently and justly. And if you speak, speak accordingly. 8. Justice. Wrong none by doing injuries or omitting the benefits that are your duty. moderation. Avoid extremes. Forbear resenting injuries so much as you think they deserve. 10. Cleanliness. Tolerate no uncleanliness in body, clothes, or habitation. 11. Tranquility. Be not disturbed at trifles, or at accidents common or unavoidable. 12. Chastity. 13. Humility. Imitate Jesus and Socrates.
Now I want to pause for a moment and let's work with our annotations on this amazing list. I've had students that say that this is enough information for me to think about for more than 10 minutes. I think they're right. Let's begin though first of all with the opening observation that he was 17, he came to Philadelphia, and he wanted to try to make himself a better person. Let's call it Franklin's project. Self-improvement. Now this is an interesting question. Stay with me for a few moments at 3B. Personally, if you had to write down one thing that you could do to make yourself a better person, say 3B, this is a personal question. What is one thing that you recognize right now that if you were to change, you would become a better person? Now that is a very interesting question. Notice how the question itself requires that you think about yourself. We give a lot of time and energy thinking about other people and what's wrong with other people. Franklin said, I wanted to turn the light of introspection on myself and ask, how can I be a better person? Number 2, he decided he would not just ask the question, but actually try to answer it. And so he had to do a bit of study, where he made a list of things he would try to do to improve himself. Now, of course, this list is what we're going to be working with at level 1 and level 2. So let's go through the list quickly. We'll begin by noticing 13 of them. He starts with the word precepts. You want to put down the word ideas or virtues. In other words, these are things he needs to do for self-improvement. Okay? He recognizes each one of these as being then for himself, are you ready for this? Something he doesn't do very well right now. I've had a few students that say, you know, I never really thought about that, but his list is an interesting list because it makes me think about how well do I do it. Now, some of this vocabulary we got to work through. So let's go through it quickly, shall we? Number 1, temperance. Now, that's not a word we use anymore today very much. To be temperate means you don't go to extremes. Look at how he wrote it. Eat, not to dullness. Drink, not to elevation. Notice, it's not that he's totally against drinking alcohol, but he says, don't get what? So you can write it down. Don't get what? What is it that he says? Right, don't get drunk. In other words, don't drink till the point that you lose your ability to be balanced. Look at the next one. This is a funny one. For a cat that liked to talk a lot, Franklin did, he said, I need to learn to be more silent. But silent in what way? Look at what he says. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. For those of you that grew up watching Disney, this is the thumper rule. Don't say anything about somebody else unless what? Right. You have something good to say about them. Wow, what an interesting idea. Yesterday, just asking. Yesterday, 3B question. Yesterday, how many times did you speak and you could have not spoken and things would have been better? See, a lot of times I like to say it like this. There's nothing wrong with people having opinions. There's nothing wrong with you having opinions. You can even have very strong opinions. The question is, why do you feel it necessary to always share your opinion with other people? Well, they need to know. Why do they need to know? Because that's the way I feel. Why do you have to say it? Because I need them to know. Why? See, Franklin asks, why? Especially, notice, read it with me again, avoid trifling conversation. Let's put it in our notes this way. Franklin was very, very focused on what we will call energy conservation. Energy conservation. He says, dude, I waste a lot of time. There are statistics out there that say, are you ready for this? That last year alone, if you're a big-time texter, if we were to simply print all of the words that you texted, either receiving or sending, if you were to print all those words, they would be into the tens of thousands of pages at the end of 1 year. But about all those words that you sent and received, the question Franklin would ask is, how important were most of them? What are you doing now? I don't know. What are you doing? I don't know. What are you doing? Franklin says, be more focused in your use of talking. Look at the next one. Order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. Pure energy conservation. Put it this way. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Then you have more of it. Number 4, resolution. I'd write this one down. It's a fascinating one, and it's in many ways going to begin to be the answer to the question, how do you do stuff you don't want to do? We all like to do stuff we like to do. The question is, how do you make yourself do stuff you don't want to do? Resolution, to resolve. Take a look at it. He says, perform what you ought, perform without fail what you resolve. I said this once to a